Practicing. Everyone knows they have to practice, but for some reason most people don't. And before I get into the sort of like technical things about how to practice, I just want to talk about the mental battles of practicing, just from my own experiences and what I see in other people. Practicing, the hardest thing about practicing is the idea of practicing. Okay, like you just get this in your mind. If you're sitting on your couch and you want to go practice, the hardest thing is you getting up, going to put your clarinet together, putting a reed on, and playing. Once you actually start playing, the process goes by relatively quickly, and it's actually rather enjoyable if you do it right. But just understand that you're always constantly fighting your own inherent laziness before you start to practice. So remember, the hardest thing about practicing is the thought of practicing. Don't confuse time and effort. Okay, many of my students have said, "Oh, I don't have time to practice." And, this is the common excuse you hear from a lot of people. And if you're a student and you're working a job and you're in very, very difficult classes, that may be true for you. But if you're at home, just looking at memes on your phone for hours on end, and you say you don't have time to practice, what you mean is you don't want to practice. Okay, so I mean, just be very, very clear with yourself that that's what the case is. Lying to other people is not okay. Lying to yourself for some reason has become okay. Just don't be a victim of all of that. The other thing about practice is there's a rule I teach people for practicing. It's called the 90% rule. And what this is no matter what passage you're working on, you should be able to play in practice. You should play it 90% perfectly in practice, right? So if you play it 10 times in a row, nine times of that should be perfect. If that's not the case, you're probably going to not like practicing, because what you wind up doing is you wind up just making a bunch of mistakes over and over and getting frustrated. That's not what proper practice is. Proper practice is doing something right and then building on top of that, right? If you do it like that, it's an addictive sort of process, right? Because you can actually see yourself getting better. I mean, it's one of the only things in which you can sit down, not be able to do something, and then after an hour, be able to do something, right? Probably not very well, but much better than when you had started. So the 90% rule, so it's 90%, it's not 100%, because if it's 100%, there's no challenge there. There's no reason for you to practice, really. So like if you're working on a technical passage, and you can play it, if you're hitting sort of 70%, that's probably okay. 90% is better. If 100% means you need to go faster or you need to do something to it that's different. Now, if you find yourself struggling with the 90%, there are two things that need to happen. You either need to play it slower, or you need to play it in smaller chunks, right? I'm going to be using a couple of measures from this year's TMEA etudes just to demonstrate this throughout these videos. But if you're working on a passage of all 16th notes, and you can't play them, you can probably play two of them, right? You can probably play two of them pretty well, and then you maybe add another one, right? This is called chaining. This is like the very core of good practice. So now you have 2 plus 1. So now you have something there. Then you can maybe add the previous note, right? You can sort of work around the thing you can do and slowly build stuff outwardly. So that's it for this video. Remember, like, get over yourself. If you want to get good at anything, you have to sit down and do it. I think what most people want is they want good things to happen to them without them doing anything at all, right? And that's just crazy. You'll never. That's not how life works. You're never going to get anywhere unless you put some effort into it, right? Remember that the hardest part of practicing is the idea of practicing. Don't lie to yourself in terms of time versus effort. 90% rule, and then chaining.